I'll just wait for everyone to come on here. All right, great. We have some people here. Hello, everyone. Good evening. How's everyone doing? My name is Bolanle Olukanni, and I'm going to be the host for the Gender Just series that Enough is Enough Nigeria is starting this week. I'm really excited because we're going to be talking to a variety and different first ladies from across the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria throughout the week, and we're going to be talking to them about issues pertaining specifically to gender, and that's why we called it the Gender Just series. I'm excited because we're going to be making sure that we're engaging you guys and we're asking you, our viewers, to throw in your questions as well. And we're also very thankful to all of our guests this week who've agreed and taken time to be part of this conversation. I think we all understand, and we're all on the same drawing board, where we realize that we do have to have conversations around issues that have to do with gender. So my first guest today, let me just check and see if she's on yet. All right, great, she's here. So I'm going to be inviting my first guest, Her Excellency Bisi Fayemi, and she is the First Lady of Ekiti State, and she really is someone that's very, very passionate when it has to do with issues that has to do with gender justice. And I'm looking forward to our conversations today. We're going to be talking about the importance and how necessary it is that we need to stop gender-based violence and the urgency in stopping this. So let me go ahead and get her on here. Fingers crossed our connection will be good and we'll be able to have a good conversation. Wonderful. There she is. Our guest for today.
Hello, Bolanle.
Oh, hi, good evening, Ma. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Let me ask our audience. Can everyone hear? Okay, we have thumbs up. It seems as if the audio is good. But do you mind just moving back just a little bit so we can see you more? Yeah, that would be good. Okay, wonderful, wonderful.
Okay.
It's great to see you. Happy birthday in arrears again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bolanle.
How was your birthday? Probably one of the most quiet birthdays you've had in a while, right?
Of course, and rightfully so.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time. I know that you celebrated it differently and you decided to start the Rapper Network. So if you can tell us a little bit about that, before we jump into our conversation.
Okay, thank you, Bolanle. If you remember, last year I gave a speech at the Arise Women's Conference in Lagos.
Yeah.
And when I was giving my brief remarks, I asked the women who were there, where is your rapper? And I told them this story about something I witnessed when I was in Uganda a couple of years ago, where a woman went into labor in the market, and other women came out with their wrappers and held them up to shield her and protect her. Yeah. And so my point was, if you want to be successful, if you want to have some form of influence, if you want to achieve your goals as a woman, or as a man for that matter, you have to be able to bring out your wrapper for others, because those wrappers signify solidarity, respect, care, love. Every one of us has a wrapper, so we have to be prepared to use it.
Mm-hmm. And I know
that's what the Rapper Network is all about.
The network is also giving out multiple grants to people on different phases and different tiers, and it's great to see, because I know you to be really passionate when it comes to issues that have to do with gender. So, and I don't, it's not a new thing. You've always been in civil service. You've always been in anything that has to do with women's rights. Can you just tell us a little bit about your background and your upbringing and where that passion really came from? Because I think a lot of times we think it's a new thing, or, it has to do with the fact that you're working side by side with your husband. But can you tell us a little bit about your background and where you got that passion from?
Okay, well, as I was growing up, I had a lot of aunts around me, my mother's sisters, and other members of the extended family. And I would witness these situations and I would ask questions. Why is this? And then they would tell me, oh, it's because we don't have a choice. So it's because women don't have a choice.
Right.
And that kept bothering me. How come it is that women do not have choices? Who decided that women should not have a choice over who they should marry, over whether they should marry at all, whether to have children, when to be educated, and so on? And when I finished my first degree and went back to do my second degree at the then University of Ife, where your dad went as well.
Yeah,
Although he was much, much older
he
than
is.
me. Oh, absolutely. I decided to write my thesis on the role of Yoruba women in southwestern Nigeria in pre-colonial times. And as I was talking to one of my professors about my plans, he asked me a question: do you think you will find any data? And I found that question rather strange, because to me, it sounded like women did not make any contributions at all, therefore there would not be any record of it. Again, it didn't sit well with me. And so that is how I started my lifelong passion of working with women, working for women. When I went back to the UK, I did some further academic studies in gender, and I started working with women's organizations and networks to provide opportunities for women, build women's leadership, build institutions, mobilize resources, and make those resources available to women's organizations and networks throughout the African continent, as well as work with different African countries on designing gender policies and ensuring that they are able to deliver on gender mainstreaming promises. So it's all this work that brought me to where I am now in Ekiti State. Because when my husband became the governor of Ekiti State for the first time in October 2010, the issue for me was charity begins at home.
Right.
So if I've been working on women's rights issues, on encouraging women's agency, ensuring that women's issues are addressed and taken care of, then I need to make sure that that happens in the Ekiti State with this platform I have, because I see it as just another platform.
Definitely. And it's interesting because I worked in Ekiti State, and I served with you in Ekiti Development Foundation.
Yes, you did.
And I have to say that I always tell people the only reason I chose to stay in Nigeria after university was because I lived in Ekiti for a year. I actually found it very, very tranquil, and it was a good transition back into being in Nigeria. And I know that Ekiti Development Fund did a lot of work when it comes to women's rights. But, the question is, there's always this narrative when we say women's rights, it always comes across as though we're demanding, society makes it seem as though we're demanding for something that is new and is novel. What would a gender-just Nigeria look like to you?
A gender-just Nigeria to me would mean that all Nigerian women would have equality of opportunity. It would mean that women would have access to education, to training, and basic resources. Right. It would mean that women have an equal say in decision making, that we would have up to 50% of women in leadership and governance. And if we can't get the 50%, at least let us have the minimum of 35% as recommended in the Beijing Platform for Action. Right. A gender-just Nigeria, as far as I'm concerned, would be a place where women have access to healthcare and the full gamut of sexual and reproductive rights. Mm-hmm. It would mean that no woman would die giving birth to a child. And it would also mean a country where women are able to live their lives in dignity and respect, where no woman or girl would be afraid that within her home and outside of her home, she's going to be violated. And worse still, that if she experiences a violation, that a culture of impunity will continue to make sure that she does not get justice. So I want to say in Nigeria, where women are regarded as full citizens and full human beings, and not second-class citizens or objects to be, traded or disposed of from one man to the other.
Right. Okay. As soon as the light just went off, we're just gonna wait for you to come back.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
You see, lights go off in government house too.
Yeah. At least it's good so that that one, it shows that you are aware of what's happening in the community as well. It's good.
Oh my dear.
Because we're always blaming, we're always saying that government officials don't know what's happening. That's the general consensus. But now we know.
How would you mean we don't know what is happening? We come from communities. We live in communities. These places we are in are just for a period of time. 4 years, max 8 years, and we'll go back to the same communities. So, anyone who is saying because they're in government, they don't know what the other people are thinking, you're on your own, because they're going to go back to those same people.
Erelu, you represent a different scope of the government, so we'll just leave it there. but you just listed a bunch of things and just basic rights. And for me, what I don't understand is, you said the word second-class citizen. What do you think is the hindrance, and why would we have such a pushback when it comes to ensuring that women do have equal rights? And because we're not asking for anything special, we're not asking for anything miraculous. We're asking, I should have the right to go to school. I should have the right to good health care. I should have the right to say, no, I don't want to get married at this age. Where does the pushback come from in our society, and why is there such a hindrance to having conversations around women's rights?
Bolanle, the pushback comes from patriarchy. We live in societies that are deeply patriarchal, and all the systems that are responsible for our socialization, our political systems, our economic systems, social systems, cultural systems, religious systems, all these systems are deeply embedded in patriarchal norms and values, male-dominated, and they also have a way of co-opting women as, custodians of these norms and values. So you see a lot of women also going out there. Some people call them patriarchal princesses.
Yes.
Going out there and enforcing these patriarchal norms and values on the rest of, on women as a whole. So I believe that for those of us who are part of the women's movement, or for those of us who call ourselves feminists, I define feminism as a global struggle against all forms of patriarchal oppression. So as a feminist, I believe that my task is to understand what I'm up against, to understand this system, to understand how it plays itself out, and then to figure out ways in which we can dismantle these patriarchal roadblocks. And if they can't be dismantled for one reason or the other, at least find ways of interrogating them and ensuring that they don't continue to mean business as usual. So that's why we are saying, for example, if we have laws in place to protect women from gender-based violence, to ensure that women have equal access to policy making and governance, then these laws would, ensure that we have these rights. And and that we move away from doing business as usual. That's the way things have always been. Or, as I said, as I was growing up, hearing things like women don't have a choice. When we have certain laws and frameworks in place, that's a start. Now women will know that they do have choices. And those of us who are in the vanguard of all this work in civil society or the women's movement, we know we have a roadmap to ensure that we get the kind of that we want. I mean, that we have to address on a daily basis. Sometimes we have some big wins, sometimes we have huge losses, but we need to keep at it because we are better. There are lots of things that are better now than they were 20 or 30 years ago. We would not even be having a conversation at all about some of these things.
Definitely. So the reason why I asked this question, and I wanted to kind of establish the framework, is we're talking about gender-based violence. And I'm finding the more I have conversations with people online, the more I attend protests, I'm finding that the role patriarchy plays in gender-based violence. And in so many ways, it seems as though we have to have two conversations at the same time. We're not just saying stop raping, we're not just saying stop hitting women, but there's also an understanding that the reasons why a lot of people do this is not only that they like power, but they also believe that women are not equal. So my question now is, we've seen a lot that's happened in the last few weeks in Nigeria, and I know Ekiti has been at the forefront in passing a lot of important laws. So I want to talk a little bit about you know, the role that the government has played, and also just you as an advocate for women has played in making sure that when it comes to issues that has to do with gender-based violence, there's progress?
Yes, thanks, Bolanle. Well, one of the first things I did during the what we call the JKF1 period, the first term of His Excellency, our governor, was to ensure that we have legal and policy frameworks in place,
Right.
which will ensure that we can address the full range of women's rights issues. One of the first things we actually investigate the national gender policy.
Okay.
The National Gender Policy was put in place in 2005 and revised in 2015. And it's meant to be a policy roadmap for state governments to then use for their own gender mainstreaming work and ensure that women's development issues and women's issues with regards to politics, the economy, social issues, and so on are addressed. Now, Ekiti State is the first state in Nigeria to have domesticated the National Gender Policy in October 2011. Because I figured that if we can have that policy in place, then we no longer have to keep begging the government to do certain things when it comes to women's rights issues. Following on the heels of that, we have the Gender-Based Violence Prohibition Law of 2011, which was specifically around gender-based violence. And then in 2013, we passed the Gender and Equal Opportunities Law. Now, and then, of course, 2013 as well, we also had the sex offenders register. So we're actually the first in the country to open a sex offenders register. And then there was Lagos in 2014. Now, in 2019, where now we have JKF2, the second term of Dr. Fayemi, what we decided to do was to harmonize our own law in Ekiti, the 2011 GBV law, with the VAP Act. Okay. Because there are elements of the VAP Act that are strong, and there are elements of our own GBV law from 2011 that are even stronger than the VAP Act. So we decided that we were going to merge the two and come up with stronger legislation. And so in October 2019, we came up with the revised GBV law. And recently, on June 5th, His Excellency signed the compulsory treatment and care law for the sexual abuse of minors. And that enables us to strengthen our GBV responses in the state to ensure that the rights of children who are sexually abused specifically can be addressed. So all these laws and frameworks are important because they enable the government to determine where to prioritize, where to place the resources, and how to respond to the needs that people have. And they also enable civil society and women's rights organizations to have tools with which they can hold the government accountable. But key to all this is the political will to drive everything. And in Ekiti State, there is strong political will to ensure that gender justice is done. We might not get it right all the time, but the political will is there.
And I have to say that in so many ways, right, you play a huge role in that. I don't think any of us are going to deny that. I was watching an interview and you said something about having champions, that it's very important that you have champions when it comes to talking about issues that have to do with gender. How can we raise more champions in the political sphere, in civil society, in private sector? How can we kind of shed some light and tell people that this is really important? You know, the other day I was telling someone, I was like, as a woman, when I'm talking to men about issues that have to do with rape, I sometimes feel like they don't listen to me as well as if it was a man talking to them. You know, so how can we raise more champions when it comes to gender justice?
Well, I think all of us have to be champions. Some will be more able than others. It doesn't matter. We should just start with what we have. But there are those who are in certain positions who need to be able to do more.
Right.
I've always believed the way, one of the, the sayings I was raised on is, to whom much is given, much is respected. In the women's movement, both within the country and globally, we have fought hard to get women into positions of power and influence. And so if we have women in decision-making, whether they are voted for, whether they were elected or selected or happen to be spouses, of influential men and so on, we owe it as a responsibility to ensure that we act as champions. We cannot be in these positions and look the other way. We have an obligation to ensure that we use whatever platforms we have to make a difference. And our platforms differ. Just as we're talking about the rappers, our rappers differ. Some rappers are made with wax print. Some are velvet rappers. Some are lace rappers. But the essence is the rapper is there to provide support and solidarity. So every woman has the capacity to be a champion for the next. Even if you are talking about the woman who is frying akara at the roadside, who sees that the girl hawking bread around her is being abused by the motor park touts, she can call the boys to order and say, you stop that. She is, a champion in her own right. And of course, we need to talk to men as well for them to be champions with other men, to go and talk to other men and also bring up boys with a better understanding of what it means to be male, or a better understanding of masculinity. Being a man means you are supposed to be responsible. It means you are supposed to be, respected or respectable. But you cannot derive, you take your own life. But there's no man who can derive any power or respect from the abuse of a woman. And if that is what is in your head, or that's what you've been socialized into from the porn you've been watching, the drugs you've been taking, or the music videos you've been watching, then we need a process of reorientation so that young boys can be brought up differently and grow up into better men. And men who are supposed to know better, who are the ones who are supposed to watch out for younger women, serve as role models, serve as mentors. They are not the ones who turn out to be predators. So I'll be sending our daughters to the university to go and study, and then they have to start running away from the directions of their lecturers. And, and everything becomes very messy when they try to file the reports, and so on. So all of us need to be accountable. I'm prepared to be accountable with the platform I'm in. And so we need to ask the next person and the next person. So for all those who are listening, everybody has a role to play. Everyone can be a champion.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for that, Ma. And I think what you said is just thinking about it in a small way, right? When we think of the word champion, you think of a mega platform, but it really just has to do with being your neighbor's keeper. Being aware of what's happening across your house. Is the person being beaten? Instead of just going to go and plead with him, you need to let this woman know she has a right to report her husband to the police or her boyfriend or whatever. So I want to talk a little bit about the next level. You talked about policies and laws. Now, in terms of the urgency in stopping gender-based violence, I was talking to someone the other day and I was like, I don't know if it's social media or I don't know if it's the internet, but it feels like there's such a rise in cases that have to do with sexual crimes against women. And I wanted to kind of get your take on it, and also what you would say would be a next possible step, just your ideas on that.
Yes. Well, I think there are two things happening here. First, I believe this is what breaking a culture of silence looks like.
Okay.
I told you 20 or 30 years ago, this conversation would not be happening around whether women have rights or... So now that we have new tools at our disposal, we have social media, we now have laws in place, and women now know that if they come forward in some instances, not most instances, they will get justice. Someone will listen to them. They'll be cared for. There are shelters to look after people so they don't have to continue staying with their abusers and so on. So more and more people are prepared to come forward. That's been my experience in the Ekiti State. Before we put the law in place, the GBV law in place, people were not talking about gender-based violence. But the moment the law was put in place, then we started to get reports from all over. And the talk in the villages and throughout the state was, if Erelu heads, Terelu Bagbo, if Erelu heads. And so it helped to reduce domestic violence a bit, but sexual violence, of course, still continues unabated. But people now know that they might get justice, that something will be done, that the people, if they come to me or if they go to some of the other structures we put in place, they won't be told, shh, keep quiet, don't let anybody hear, don't bring shame to the family. So this is what it looks like when a culture of silence is broken. It's like the floodgates have just opened. On the other hand, we have these influences that are responsible for the spike that we are witnessing now. As I said earlier, with more access to technology, porn is now more accessible. Now, an informed adult is is willing to, is able to do whatever they want to in their spare time with with informed consent. That's what you want to do with your time is entirely your business. But for 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds to to be so for porn to be so accessible to them, that's a problem. Then we have a serious drug crisis in the country as well. And this drug crisis runs throughout the social classes in the country. And then when we also add that to the fact that people are not willing to have certain conversations around what's happening around them with their families. If you look at cases of child abuse, for example, 9 times out of 10, the perpetrator of child abuse is someone known to the family or someone from within the family.
Yes.
And so when we have cases where, this is happening and people are in denial, they don't want to come forward, a culture of impunity continues to thrive. And the bodies of victims or survivors keep piling up. And then it looks as if, it's a never-ending pandemic, which is where we found ourselves now. So my sense is that on these two issues, on the breaking the culture of silence, we need to continue at that and make sure that we continue to make it possible for people to come forward and that we don't let them down with judgment, with asking them stupid questions about what were you wearing or why did it take you so long to come forward. And then on the other issues, we need to now try and get to some more root causes of the problem we are trying to deal with. Because yes, we know that a lot of it is to do with, as we were talking about earlier, our patriarchal norms and values, the way women are devalued and undervalued. Then we need to then have a conversation about what it means to have a society where women are free to make their own choices, where women can actually have a voice. And so they will stop being seen as these objects that men have a sense of entitlement to.
Right.
Because a lot of women don't have the same kinds of resources as men, because we have a lot of young girls, for example, who live in very poor environments, it's very easy for something like transactional sex to thrive. So these girls are lured with small amounts of money, and then these guys then say, why won't I have sex with her? I spent all this money on her. What is she going to give me in return? So we need to try and understand all these dynamics as well and address them. And as I was saying earlier, it's not something that the government alone can do or one person can do. That's why we need a variety of champions at different levels. So now, talking about the next level that you mentioned, we have the laws in place in some instances. Where we don't have laws, the state governors have promised last week through their declaration of a state of emergency that they will go and put those laws in place, like the VAP Act and the Child Rights Act. Now, for those who do have laws, they need to be serious about implementation. There's the whole issue of the treatment, care, and support that survivors need. The more survivors we're able to take care of, the more we will be able to encourage others to come forward and for this culture of silence to be beaten down. And for justice to be done with these survivors as well. We need a lot of education and orientation.
Yes.
We need to do a lot of work with communities, particularly traditional rulers, traditional chiefs. We need to work with religious leaders. We need to work with community leaders, associations, different parents and so on. We need to work with schools to try and address their school curriculum. What is your school curriculum saying about gender roles? In this day and age, 2020, you're still carrying textbooks of Baba Emeka comes from work and Yamika is pounding fufu. In 2020, for goodness sake. Right. So we need to look at all these things, look at the curriculum in schools, and also in the process, then, keep raising champions in all these spaces. And in Ekiti State, for example, where we have the Ekiti State Gender-Based Violence Management Committee, which I chair, we have been engaged in a series of advocacy sessions with all these groups I'm telling you about. We've had conversations with traditional rulers. We've met with, leaders of tertiary institutions. We've spoken to the police. Tomorrow, I'm going to have a session with the chairman of local governments in our state. We are meeting with religious leaders and so on. And so we are now going to be pushing the ball into their court for them to take it back into their own communities or constituencies for them to see what can be done there. Everyone has a role. Basically, the consensus should be at community level, state level, and national level. The consensus should be that we will not have a society where women and girls are not safe.
Yes, yes. But I want to find out, I feel like there's so many points that you touched in there, specifically talking about, there's like two different conversations happening. There's the online conversation, which is a small, minuscule community that represents a very small percentage of Nigeria. Then there's everyone else. Like you said, there's community leaders, there's police officers. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about your experience because I know you've had a lot of conversation with law enforcement. And in so many ways, I remember the first thing I remember when I got to Ekiti was everyone was very much afraid of anything that has to do with issues with gender. It's true. It was like, don't let Erelu hear, and that was a reputation that was there, and in so many ways, we created a safe bubble for women. But that's when you are there. How long do you think it takes to implement that kind of culture and also that kind of consistency where even the police officers know this is a big no-no? The way we talk to women who come in to report crimes, sex crimes, the way we talk to women who come and report anything of domestic violence, we need to make sure that we respond to them properly because, again, don't let Erelu hear. So when Erelu is gone, we still want that energy to still be there. How long do you think it takes to really change a culture and, their ideas when it comes to gender?
That's a tough one. But I will try and respond to that from my experience.
Yeah.
And it's something I found extremely painful and, what we are now, trying to address. Now, after all that hard work during the JKF1 period, we're putting the laws in place with, having done all this advocacy with the different stakeholders I mentioned. The administration came to an end and the new government came in. The Gender-Based Violence Management Committee is a statutory body based within the Ministry of Women's Affairs. It wasn't an Ekiti Development Foundation project.
Right.
It wasn't an Fayemi project. I just happened to be the person who chaired the body. But the body remained there for whoever the governor was to appoint his own person and to get the committee running again to serve the needs of Ekiti women. That did not happen. So for 4 years, the committee did not function. So in 2019, in the JKF2 administration, His Excellency Fayemi then reconstituted the Gender-Based Violence Committee. But that's the bad news, that nothing happened as far as the government was concerned during that period.
Right.
But something good that happened during that period was because the civil society organizations and women's organizations in Ekiti during the time that we were there, during the JKF1 period, had been supported, the capacities have been built, they have been given a certain amount of exposure, and they knew that the issues they were working on were valid and they were not crazy or out of their minds, which is what they usually tell us in civil society. Yes. They carried on the work. And so people in communities were always able to rely on these civil society organizations, these organizations who were struggling to do things with the very meager resources that they have. So what we have now is the Gender-Based Violence Management Committee has been reconstituted, but I made sure that we drafted on more NGOs than we had in the past. And even after drafting them onto the GBV committee, I'm working to ensure that we have a group of them who will continue to work as a collective, regardless of what happens in government, so that if there's something that needs to be done around the GBV response in the state, we have this network of organizations who are frontline service providers, the lawyers, the counselors, the therapists, the community outreach workers, who can make sure that things are done. Because it's a very painful thing to happen when you put in so much work and then because things have been politicized, no one cares, and then, everything is just left, and the women in the community have nothing. So it's a lesson that I've learned, and we are trying to make sure that we develop deeper partnerships, better relationships, so that, we leave stronger institutions, both at the governmental and non-governmental level.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because I think the great thing is that you've been able to experience this firsthand and see what happens when, your presence is away and what happens when you come back. And in so many ways, I feel like the conversation, honestly, even though social media is just a minuscule and represents a small percentage of the population, you do find that the conversation is trickling out into the community. And you mentioned something about how community leaders, you're engaging with them. Do you think that we need to have a heavy emphasis and conversation on gender roles to really talk about gender-based violence?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Because gender-based violence is just a symptom of what happens when people do not understand that, we have to address the issue of gender power dynamics and what happens when one gender deliberately sets out to disempower another by denying them agency and denying them a voice. Right. And generally throughout your life cycle, as someone who is female, then start your life cycle right from when you are a baby to when you are about to go into the grave. Your status is considered to be less than that of a male. So we need to have those conversations so that people can understand that men and women were created equal in the sight of God. We have our different roles, but because you happen to be the man and the husband, and I happen to be the woman and the wife, does not make you my master, does not make me your slave. That's not how the world is supposed to work. When young men grow up with that mentality of women being slaves, of women just being there to service the needs of men, that is one of the things that gives them a sense of entitlement to women's bodies. Even from the body language, you go to the market, a local market, to go and spend your money.
Always touching you.
You have your money to spend. And instead of treating you with respect, madam, come into my shop, madam, come and see, hey, come, and then they're pinching your bottom and please.
It's disgusting. Yeah.
So we need men to talk to other men about what it means to be a man. If you want to be a man in the real sense of the word, this is what it means. A real man provides for his family. A real man respects the women in his life, protects the women in his life. A real man stands up for them. A real man does not go out and abuse women. A real man does not go out and take things that are not his to be taken by force. And a real man asks, may I, can I, and doesn't just take because it's there for the taking.
Mm-hmm. Earlier, there was at the beginning of the interview, you mentioned something about how women, you call them the patriarchy custodians, because a lot of times when you're online, you see that it's not only men that are saying, well, what did she do there? Why did she go there? It's also women. And I know there was an essay that you wrote, and I believe it was called Patricia's and Patrick.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
So please, can you just, first of all, if you haven't read Above Whispers, you need to read the collection. And you also need to read you need to be on Above Whispers, Erilu's platform, where she regularly writes essays and articles that really talk about gender roles. Can you first of all just explain a little bit about this concept of Patricks and Patricias? Because I think a lot of times we're always pointing fingers at others and not realizing how we contribute to maintaining patriarchy and gender roles and gender-based violence.
Okay, so the conversation is about Patricks and Patricias, Fredericks and Fredericas.
Right.
So if we were to give patriarchy a name, let's say patriarchy wasn't this concept. Let's say it was a human being and needed a name. We would call him Patrick, because definitely patriarchy is a he. Yeah, so we would call him Patrick. And because Patrick has been around for a long time, he's very powerful. He gets what he wants. He does what he wants. He says what he wants. He has not held on to that power for so long without the active collaboration of some Patricias who have been lulled into a false sense of security, or who have been given crumbs from the table of Patrick for them to believe that if they are with Patrick on everything, then they too get to be part of his kingdom. So Patrick's function with Patricians to sustain Patrick's kingdom, the kingdom of patriarchy. And then we have the Fredericas who are about to call Patrick out on his crap. Like, no, we've had enough of this. We are going to start asking questions about how you run this show, about, what entitlement you have to our labor, to our bodies, to our voices, and so on. And then there are other guys around who have been part of Patrick's gig, but they've too been thinking, this is really not too great, that, some people are not getting a good deal here. Those are the Fredericks who agreed to work with the Fredericas to call Patrick out on, the way he's doing business. So Patrick is patriarchy. The Patricians are those who sustain patriarchy, those who mount surveillance on other women. The Patricians are the ones who ask young women, how come you are not married? When you get married, when are the children going to start coming? When the children have come, hey, it's only a girl you gave birth to. It is the Patricians who bundle girls off to for genital mutilation. Even when the Patricks have not asked, it is the Patricians who make it their business to make sure it happens. And it's the Fredericas who are always asking the questions, who are always doing the matches, who are always saying, no, we can do things in a better way. And then there are Fredericks who back them up. But this is it. The whole essence of that conversation is not to replace a patriarchy with a matriarchy. We are not saying we want to empower women so they can take over the world and disempower men. What we are saying is men and women can be equally powerful. Men and women can contribute equally. We cannot achieve any of our development goals if we do not empower women. That is like trying to clap with one hand. So that's, that's what essay is all about. So I hope people understand it. That it's better to go and read the essay.
You do need to read it, and I think it's a brilliant illustration. And the reason why I wanted to bring it up is, we see situations where a lot of times I want to find out, is there a sense of loss in community? Because now we have situations where maybe that someone is being abused. A neighbor knows that this woman is being beaten. What is that? Why is there still that need to protect this idea of marriage and also protect the institution that is not serving the woman in that situation, especially in issues when it comes to domestic violence? And how can we encourage people to be more involved in issues that people might say is not really our business?
Well, remember when we started our conversation, I spoke about choices.
Right.
One of the key agendas of the feminist movement is choices. Women should be able to have a choice. Women should have a choice in whether they want to get married or they want to stay single. Even in the context of gender-based violence, you take domestic violence, for example, feminists all over the world, we keep tearing our hair out when we see women who are in violent situations, but they keep making the choice to stay. Right. And so as feminists, we have learned that the best we can do is to ensure that she has choices. And so if we have a shelter where she can go to, if you have an extra room in your house, if you have some capital you can give her for her to go and start a business, or if you have money you can give her to go and rent an apartment, then you are part of providing her with a variety of options. But if she's stuck in that abusive relationship, and then we say, okay, she says she wants to stay there, let her stay there, and whatever comes out of it is her problem, then we are not playing our role as feminists. We always have to be there consistently. And I've found myself, in those situations with people that I've known, for a long time, figuring out how to provide support when the support, is required. And most times women, it's not they don't want to make that decision to, go somewhere else or do something somewhere else, but those choices are just simply not available. And that's why I've been saying, if we want to really address the issue of gender-based violence, we have to look at it in holistic terms.
Okay.
as we have the laws in place to ensure that justice is done immediately, whether it's for domestic violence or sexual violence, we also need to look at the material conditions in which women live. If those conditions do not change and women continue to be vulnerable, the violations will continue.
Yeah.
If there's a 13, 14-year-old who is from a poor family, and these are some of the cases that I've been working on recently in the state. A 13, 14-year-old is from a poor family who gets enticed by 50 naira, 100 naira, and she gets pregnant. When she has her baby, even with all the struggles to make sure that she goes back to school, that's been accepted now in Ekiti. Even if she's pregnant, she can stay on in school.
Yes,
After she's had her baby, she can go back to school. But if she's still from that poor household, where she can't even have 10 naira to feed herself a day, then she's going to continue to be at risk. And so something then needs to be done to make sure that women's economic empowerment issues are addressed, women's livelihood issues are addressed, and whatever our governments are doing with regards to investment in agriculture, investment in the economy, and so on, that is why it's important for them. It's important that they address the issue of the impact.
Well, I think the internet. Hold on. Let's just hold on. Okay. We'll just pause a little bit. I know the internet has been doing great, so I hope you guys are enjoying this conversation. Thank you so much for your contributions. I can see the comments that are coming in, and we really have had a robust conversation. Okay, so we're gonna try and go ahead and get her back in, get Erelu back in. Just give me a second here. One second, guys. Let's see. Okay, let me go ahead and add Erelu back. Thank you so much for your patience. All right, great, we have you back.
Okay, okay.
They already started a hashtag bring back Erelu.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, one of the great things that social media has done is it's provided really great tools for advocacy and information sharing. And I think those are the good things we should keep working on. Slides with a lot of naughtiness as well, but you know, that's to be expected.
It does. It's kind of a situation where you use it for whatever it is you want, and you get the best out of it if you want to. I want to, before we're running out of time, but I have one question that I really want to ask, and you know, it's how can we really change the mindset of law enforcement and also the Nigerian police? Do you feel like there's some positive response and some openness in terms of, you know, their orientation being changed when it comes to gender-based violence issues based on your experience?
Okay, so now one of the things that we need to look at when we want to address issues of gender-based violence, we need to adopt what I call the pressure cooker approach.
Okay.
And that means steam from the top, as in pressure from the top, and steam from below, pressure from below.
Right.
With regards to the police, we have to see pressure from the top. For example, last week, the state governors issued a declaration of emergency on gender-based violence. The Federal Executive Council also issued a statement to say that they were going to take GBV issues very seriously, and they set up a GBV management committee to coordinate responses. Now, I would like to see the Inspector General of Police come up with a roadmap of how that state of emergency applies to the police, right from the very top. Gotcha. Right down to our communities. And then for those of us who are in those communities, to now start holding them accountable. If the policeman posted to the remotest village knows that the Oga at the top in Abuja has said, this is the approach he wants to see on gender-based violence, they will not be asking survivors when they go to the police station, you say they rape you, now you the first one then go rape, waiting you the way and say, see how you dress. So if he knows that his bosses, you know, have taken a position on the issue, then they'll fall in accordingly. Then the requisite training, sensitization, and awareness raising can take place. So we need to have pressure on both ends. right from the top, and we've been having some conversations with people at that end, as well as those in communities as well. Now, it's also really important for us to have, for those of us in the women's movement, to have a great relationship with whoever the commissioner of police is in your state. The commissioner of police in Ekiti State, for example, is my really great friend. We become great friends because he knows that if I don't want this woman's trouble. So he's been absolutely fantastic. So you need to make sure that the CP is your friend. If it seems as if he doesn't understand what you're trying to do, make him understand. And that's why we need champions. So if you have champions in government, then, that conversation gets to be a lot easier. But we definitely need to see more training and a better orientation of the police, because without, the support of the police, a lot of the survivors, they don't want to go. That's why they show up in my office as if I'm the one who is going to help them go and arrest the perpetrator. But they know, however, that at least I can, make a phone call or make sure that something is done. But we need the police to, do what they're supposed to do, so that we can continue to trust in them and, know that, justice to be done, as opposed to them being the ones sabotaging cases and encouraging, the notion of what we call rape and beg. Oh yeah, making a go settle. And, oh yeah, waiting to go pay them, for police officers to be the one leading that.
Right. So I want to get this question. There's this question that's been going around, and everyone has been saying,
okay, what kind of
Yes, Ma, I can hear you. Yes, Ma, we can hear you. So I want to ask this question, and there's this question that's been going around, and everyone has been asking, what should the consequences be for people who are rapists? And can you hear me? Hello, Erilu, can you hear me? Oh gosh, I want to really get this question in. You guys, can you guys hear me? Okay, maybe. It seems as if we're having a slight issue, but I think it might be my internet. Let me exit and question. Okay, let's see. Give her a second to come back on. I hope this conversation has been, engaging, and I hope that you've been answering. I feel like I have a better roadmap. Okay, we're just gonna wait a few more minutes for Erilu to come back on, and then we will go ahead and end. This last question has been on everyone's mind, and I think that we just really need to ask the hard questions, and also just make sure that we ask questions that, what are the solutions? How important is consequences when it comes to reducing gender-based violence and making communities understand that, there's something serious will happen. So just give me a second. Let's see if we can get her back for this last question. I can't even lie, you guys, I'm very confused right now as to, is she back? She's not back yet. We'll give it a few more minutes, but thank you so much to everyone for joining. I'm reading your conversation. Okay, she's requesting, so let's get her in really quick and go ahead and ask this last question. Okay. Thank you for the awesome feedback. I really appreciate it. Yay! We kept trying. I was like, making sure that
we don't know what happened.
We've actually done really well, because honestly, sometimes when I'm doing live, I just feel like I have to put anointing on my phone and my internet and say, please have mercy on me. It's not easy. And it's also a prime time for a lot of people to be live. But I want to ask this question before we wrap up. Consequences when it comes to gender-based violence. People have talked about castration, people have talked about the death penalty, people have talked about a variety of consequences that they feel should be placed, and the law should say harsh punishments. What do you think, what kind of punishments would you like to see for people who are convicted of any type of gender-based or sexual violence?
Do you want me to give you my own personal opinion or my public relations opinion?
So I never know. give us both. Give us both. Give us both.
And then for Twitter to explode, I say Edenu says men should be castrated.
Says, because that's what they're good at.
Yeah. Well, sexual violence is a heinous crime.
Yes.
It's on the same level as murder. So rapists should be treated the same way we treat murderers. If it is the death penalty that is suitable for murderers, depending on how heinous the crime is, fine. If it is life imprisonment, so be it. I believe anyone who, raped should receive a minimum of 25 years in jail. They should go to jail for the rest of their lives. And if they manage to get up by some technicality, then the sex offenders register should kick in. They should still be registered as sex offenders, and the images paraded throughout their communities so that people know that this person is no better than an animal.
Yeah. And thank you so much for that, Erilu. And the reason why, Erilu mentioned, she said that it's a crime as heinous as murder. And I think people don't understand what it does to a person and the damage. We don't really talk about that, and I think it's so important that there's more naming and shaming, because what I'm realizing is that human beings, we don't change unless there are consequences attached to something we do. Erilu, before I let you go, I want to talk a little bit about, encouragement, words of advice that you have for everyone that is fighting for the women's rights movement, and also in regards to gender-based violence. What last words would you leave with us?
Well, I would like to say that we need to keep at it. Right now, there's this moment where we had a similar moment last year with the Pasola case, and I wrote an essay at the time and I called it the Pasola Movement. This is another moment now, the Uwa movement.
Right.
Plus the other ones that have come up around the same time. Young women being, raped and killed, some in their homes, in churches, and so on. We need to build on the anger we feel at this moment, the frustration that we feel. We need to build on it and make sure that we keep the momentum up. Now that the governors in our respective states, for example, have declared a state of emergency, we need to go and look for them. We need to organize ourselves, into committees, the marches and so on, and ask our governors, now that we have the state of emergency in place, what are we going to do? But as women's rights organizations, we too should be prepared with our own plans and our own roadmaps. These are our requests. These are the things we would like you to do. And I would like all of us, as I said earlier, to see ourselves as champions who are in position to go out and recruit other champions. To those who are survivors of gender-based violence, I would say, share your story with someone, but it is also your choice not to share your story. Don't feel under any compulsion. But please, for the sake of God, if you come across the story of another woman, particularly online, if you don't have anything to say, don't say anything. As you young people say, please just waka pass. Don't say anything. Don't shame anybody. Don't blame anybody. Rape is never the fault of the victim. We need, as I said yesterday on one of these talks, the shame and the stigma needs to move squarely onto the head, the feet, and the entire body of the perpetrator. I'm not the victim. The victim should not be shamed. They are not the ones who are supposed to be hounded. It is the perpetrators. So let's try as much as possible to look out for one another. But also I must say that especially very young women out there, please, if you are in a relationship with someone and you don't know that person really well, don't go and visit them at home. If you need to go on a date, go to a neutral place. Go to the movies, go to a restaurant, go to a park. Because if you go to his house and something happens and it becomes, she said, he said, you don't give consent, you just thought you were going to the home or someone who is a good friend or someone who you like, and he's saying that because I spent money on her, I have a sense of entitlement. So please leave the men, to their money. Let us go out and empower ourselves. Let older women find ways in which they can work with younger women to mentor them, give them a sense of empowerment, so that we stop this culture of men feeling that they're entitled to our bodies because we are not complete human beings in our own right. So every woman out there, whatever age you go, and thank you, Bolanle, for having me.
thank you so much for, really giving us a map and a framework. And also thank you so much, Erelu, because we know how much you're fighting for us. When I saw the state of emergency announcement, I was like, there we go. That's, in my head, I knew how much work and how much is going on behind the scenes. And yeah, we really appreciate it. And thank you for using your platform in such a way that you realize you're being held accountable, and history will write good things about you. So thank you so much, Erelu. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. But before I go, I also need to mention, for those who haven't heard, that there are some of us Nigerian governors' wives who have got together.
Hi guys. So I wanted. Hi guys, how's it going? I'm gonna see if I can get Erelu back here. I know that she was talking specifically about the governor's wives, and they have come together to form a coalition specifically about gender-based violence. Okay, so she's here. Let me see if I can get her back on really quick. The conversation was, Yay! All right. You're back. Sorry, I'm so sorry, man. The live went. We had gone and we had exceeded an hour. So
yes, I saw that. Yes,
but I know that it was really important that we talk about. You're specifically going to talk about what the first ladies have come together to do. So please go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So Nigerian governors' wives against gender-based violence, and some of us have got together to work on how we can address GBV in our respective states.
Right.
And one of the first things we did was write that memo to the Nigerian Governors Forum, to our husbands, to demand, amongst other things, that they declare a state of emergency on GBV. And women's rights groups and civil society organizations in the country had also been working on the same issue as well. So we just lent our voices to it. And our husbands agreed with us. And, that was done. So what we are working on now is getting the VAP Act.
Right. Sorry, I'm still here. Sorry, my camera just turned.
Okay. For those who don't have legislation, working on getting the VAP Act, domesticated, as well as the child rights law. For those of us who do have legislation, for us to address implementation. So that's one of the first areas we are going to be working on. Then second, we are all concerned about how we respond to the needs of survivors in our respective states. And we agree that every state, at the very least, needs to have a sexual assault referral center, what is known as a SAC, where GBV survivors can be taken to immediately for them to receive medical attention, where forensic evidence can be taken, rape kits can be used, post-exposure prophylaxis can be administered, where they can receive counseling, and basically the full range of support that is required. And also, every state needs a shelter for women, whether it's a shelter run by the government or run with women's rights organizations. Ideally, every single local government in every state should have, if not a full-fledged center, at least a safe house where a woman in distress can go to. And then, of course, we are all going to be working on the issues I spoke to you earlier about education and reorientation with a range of partners. And that would look, that kind of engagement would look, it won't look the same in the country. It will look different from place to place. But we are all committed to ensuring that we review the school curriculum, that we have conversations with parents, and that we have conversations with our traditional rulers and religious leaders. And then something that is extremely important, and I want women's rights organizations and CSOs to be aware of this. Every state that has a gender-based violence law needs an implementing mechanism for that law.
Okay.
And that implementing mechanism should be made up of statutory agencies as well as civil society organizations. So, for example, in Lagos, it's called the DVRST, Domestic Violence Rapid Response Team. In the
Right.
Ekiti State, we have the Ekiti State Gender-Based Violence Management Committee, and Ogun State recently have set up their own GBV Management Committee as well. It's important for us to have a coordinated response to GBV issues in our state. It doesn't necessarily have to be led by the First Lady, but it is hoped that First Ladies will act as champions in different ways. But for those First Ladies who are willing to do so, then that's absolutely fine. But this coordinating mechanism has to bring on board the statutory agencies concerned, Ministry of Women's Affairs, Health, Justice, Education, Police, and so on, alongside a range of service providers from civil society, those who can provide legal support, those who can provide counseling, and so on. So I hope that, we get to do something to operationalize a lot of the concerns that we've been having around GBV response. But as I said, all of us are in this.
Right. And I wanted to ask, is this something, so when you say all of this, is it all an effort that all 36 states, have come together, all the wives of 36 states, the 36 states have come together to work on?
Those of us who are involved in this group, right now there are 15 of us, but we hope that more would indicate an interest. It's open to whoever wants to be a part of it. But when we put out the word to find and to have a sense of who would be interested in working together on GBV responses, because last year, as 36 First Ladies of the Federation, we actually did a statement on sexual violence in the country after the Pasola Dakulo issue happened. So we issued a statement on GBV in the country. The statement came from all of us, and Her Excellency the First Lady, Hajia Aisha Buhari, encouraged us to speak up and issue a statement. So we drafted the statement and issued it. And then now that we, have another moment that has, arisen, so some of us felt it should go beyond issuing statements. Some of us should actually set aside time and focus on working on this. And so we put out a call, and around 15 of us indicated an interest that we wanted to work together on this. But of course, we hope that others would want to as well, wherever they are.
Definitely. All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Erelu, for your time. Again, we really appreciate it. Thank you for really explaining and elaborating on ways that we can move forward. And, we really hope that the work that you're doing, we'll begin to see the fruits of labor. We already know that it's moving forward, and this conversation is, like Erelu said, it needs to be ongoing. We cannot lose momentum, and I highly recommend that you follow Above Whispers, because I always tell people that social media gives you snippets and pieces of content that isn't as educative. I like to go offline. I actually call anywhere that's not social media now offline. Because there you'll be able to find a lot more robust information. So thank you so much, Erelu.
Thank you so much, Bolanle. It's been really great being here.
Thank you. All right, bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, again, thank you very much to Erelu for taking time to sit down with us and have this conversation. Again, this is the Gender Justice Series, and I will be here all week on Enough is Enough Nigeria's page. So please tell your friends, community, we're giving you good interviews, good content, engaging content. Tomorrow, I will be sitting down with the First Lady of Kwara State, and we'll be talking about empowerment. And it's going to be an interesting conversation because there's a lot to discuss and a lot to unpack. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. We've already saved the other interview on the IG page, and we're hoping that this conversation where we're talking about gender-based violence, it doesn't die down. It's been a rough time, I think, for the world, but I always say that in times where there's a lot of sadness and there's a lot of reality on what's really happening in the world, we need to push through. It's just a birthing pain to something greater. So please don't lose despair and lose hope. And yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow here, same time, same place at 8 p.m. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.